Good morning, everybody. How are you today? So today I'm going to be wrapping up our chapter on culture. And our focus today is going to be on the last section, which is about values. And if just to kind of review for a minute first, I found a couple of good cartoons to kind of help us review. So remember, the last section was all about how within a culture we see a lot of variability, meaning there are people who don't necessarily fit with that society's, values and with their norms, and they perhaps may violate that society's folkways and perhaps even their mores. And so they've created a subculture, which may or may not be defined as a cult. And perhaps there are groups who are working for change or who are refusing to follow that society's values or folkways or mores, and they are perhaps a counterculture. We also talked about how there are different ways that people respond, to society's culture and how they respond to some of these subcultures and countercultures within their society, but how they also kind of interact with other people around the world. And one thing is, of course, ethnocentrism, this belief that you are better than others. There's this idea of cultural relativism, which is the homework that you had due today, which is this idea that you need to judge someone off of, their society standards. Stop judging them off of your own values, which is incredibly, incredibly hard to do. And of course, there is cultural diffusion, the idea that cultures will change over time as they interact with each other. And this idea of cultural lag, that some aspects of a culture change faster than other. There is this process of discovery, right, where we're finding new uses for things we already have, or invention, where we're creating totally new products, which will continue to happen in the future to make our lives easier. And this idea of cultural leveling, this process where, some aspects of a society, have been influenced by others. So it is partially cultural diffusion, but we really see in cultural leveling that there's this true globalization, and more so now than ever before because of the internet and because of trade. There's so many similarities between cultures. But I did find a couple of very interesting kind of, this is sociology after all, so there's only so many good cartoons I can find that are obviously school appropriate. But I've got this one right here, and this is, that's why I don't have my own YouTube channel, really. I do now, but not that anybody would ever really watch it. We've got ethnocentrism in cartoons, and he says, we're a very tolerant society, but if you don't behave like us, you can go back to where you bloody came from. So obviously this is a British cartoon. And yet again, if you don't fit in, you can get the heck out of here. And even though this was a cartoon that was made in Great Britain, the ideas so much hold truth in America. I've seen this more so in the past few years, I feel like, than ever before, where there is this mentality that, oh, you don't like our views, you disagree with our thoughts, especially after the past election. There were so many people who felt like, oh, if you disagree, then you can get the heck out of here. You can move to Canada, things of that nature. But that's not what America's about. America is a country where we pride ourselves on free speech and free press and freedom of religion and freedom. It's one of our key values, which is the focus of my lecture of today. And part of that is to respect others and to respect others' differences and to embrace them and to try to have some of that empathy. It's kind of the goal of this class, is to have that verstehen, right? Going back to Max Weber, that you try to walk a mile in their shoes. But this political cartoonist, this comic is really trying to make fun of that a little bit, about how there are so many people out there, clearly in Great Britain, also in the US, who are like, oh, you don't fit in with our typical norm, or meaning you at least don't fit in with my views, get the heck out of here. You don't belong, you don't behave. And that's a very ethnocentric view about different subcultures within your country, but also about other people in the world. You're definitely judging them off of your own group's cultural values and traditions and norms. And here's another one. This one I think is fantastic, especially because growing up in the Chicago suburbs, I had a very different early childhood experience in teen years and adulthood than many of you guys have, where so much of my class was diverse, and they were not necessarily, many of them were Christian, but they were also Muslim, and they were also Jewish, and they were African American, and they were white, and they were Asian. And so we're talking about people who have very different ethnic backgrounds, who spoke multiple languages at home, whose parents were first-generation Americans, who had different religious beliefs than perhaps my own. And I learned all sorts of different things. And I had friends who, for example, were Muslim and who were very proud of their culture. And so you've got two very different views here. a woman on the left who says, look at that poor woman over there. Everything's covered up but her eyes. What a cruel male-dominated culture. Thinking that this woman, who is the Muslim woman, has no opportunity to express herself or to show her clothing or her status or her fashions. And, it must be a male-dominated culture which is telling her to do these things. Whereas the Muslim woman feels the exact opposite way. And she says nothing covered but her eyes, meaning that clearly this woman's body must be on display for the pleasure of men, or she feels the need to expose herself to please men. What a cruel male-dominated culture. And so it's interesting yet again that these women both think that they are being controlled by a society, by a culture that is dominated by men, telling them what to do, that they have very limited power. And they're making that judgment about somebody else. And they're really judging someone else based off their own cultural standards of beauty and what's important to them and what they value. But that's yet again something that we're just assuming is happening, which isn't necessarily the reality. Now, that's not to say that there are not, Muslim women who perhaps don't enjoy, wearing the full burqa, and of course who were angry under the rule of Afghanistan as the Taliban were in power. But there's also women that were mistreated. But there's also women who celebrate this as part of their heritage and as part of their culture, and are perfectly okay with wearing this and feel that it's a way of respect and tradition. It's something that Americans simply can't understand because we don't understand enough about their values and their way of life. So let's talk about values. When we're talking about values, we're talking about something that is truly important to a person, that it's truly important to a group of people. And in America, over time, we have 15 different categories of values. And the sociologist Robin Williams, not the dearly departed comedian who is hilarious and once upon a time played the genie in Aladdin and all sorts of other roles, he identified 15 different kind of categories of values. So for example, he talked about work. And he basically said that, Americans are obsessed with work and they're disciplined for work. They're dedicated to work. They believe in hard work, of living a very, a life that's, putting in extra hours. They would like extra pay for that, but they're willing to work hard, do dirty work, get the job done. He also talked about morality, about how people in America tend to have a general sense of right versus wrong, and they want, the people who are the wrongdoers be punished. They're willing to report crimes to the police. They're not going to really allow that to happen in their community. And, unfortunately, that isn't the case necessarily for everyone in America. That's just the case for, certain groups. We also have this belief, in humanitarianism. So the idea that you should, help each other and respect each other at times. There's this idea of efficiency, right? That the idea that we need to come up with new ways to solve problems that are efficient, that will save us time, that will save us money, that will save energy, and that perhaps will be very practical as we complete those things. We'll get things done in the shortest amount of time possible, which is why Americans constantly create new inventions to save them time and energy. We're all about progress. So we're all about continuing to improve our lives, coming out with new material comforts to make our lives easier, whether it's heated blankets or weighted blankets or whatever it may be. But life is about progress, and it's about getting more money, getting more property, getting more material possessions to show that progress and that improvement. Now, of course, on the opposite side of the coin, that may lead to environmental issues. So there are repercussions there. Americans, of course, are obsessed with equality and democracy. The idea that everybody should be treated equal in this country, whether they are man or woman or gay or straight or, trans or black, white. I'm trying to think of every group here possible. Asian, Hispanic, you name it. We're about equality. And of course, we've come so far in this country, but we still have so far yet to go. But it's the idea that everybody should have a chance at success, and that it should be based off of your merit. It's in this country, we've never been about who you know. It's why, in our Constitution, we were never going to allow nobility titles or things like that, like they had in England. It's not about your birthright or what you were born into. This country is all about you make your own choices, and you are able to make your own decisions, and you create your own prosperity. You create your own future. And everybody has the right to equally participate in our government to improve our democracy. The big thing in our country, of course, is freedom. We're all about those personal freedoms, which are protected in our Bill of Rights, whether it's free speech or freedom of religion or freedom of press, your Second Amendment rights, your rights to privacy, which are not clearly identified in the Constitution, but ultimately have been applied through the states through the Ninth and 10th Amendments. And so we're all about those personal protections. Americans also really and truly have cared somewhat about, education and romantic freedom, monogamy, lack of racism, the idea that there's a group that's somewhat superior, and all of that stuff has come about more so in more modern times. But, we really focus on personal achievement in terms of doing well on your own and at school, and this focus on, your individual efforts. So he categorized these 15 major values. And the question, I guess, really is, if we were in class, I would ask you guys, what do you think? These were values. He identified these years ago. And, are these values things that were traditional for the greatest generation, the generation that, was dominant during World War II, or for my parents' generation of the 1970s? When we're talking about close to 40 years ago when he wrote these, in today's world, are these still true? Are these archaic, or are they aging? Are there new values which should be added? Are there ones that should be taken off that list? And I guess if I had to debate, I'd say that equality and democracy and freedom are so important to Americans, and individualism and work and efficiency and practicality and progress, material achievement, progress, material comfort, personal achievement, I think those are still on there. I guess my question is, does morality and humanitarianism still play the role that it once did? Have Americans' morals changed? Have Americans focused on helping others and humanitarian aid? Has that changed? Is that something that all people actually value? Has it improved? Has it worsened? I guess that might be the one that I think there might be something that's changed. And I think there could be some things that are added to the list as well, but I think the other ones really do still apply. But if we were in class, we'd have kind of a chat about what your thoughts are. And when we're comparing our American values to the values of people in other countries, they definitely differ. For example, here's a picture, and if we're talking about like Japan, for example, they really respect, and most Asian countries do, they have this respect for their elders. The Chinese have always talked about filial piety, of respecting your elders. The Japanese would never consider, putting their elders in a nursing home with having strangers take care of them. They would live with them. If not, they would hire nurses, things like that. But it's all about the collective group and working, as one united group, as one united family. And we see that a lot in their factories and in their offices and their company, that you have such this deep loyalty and respect to your boss and to your coworkers, and you work together as this one collective group. So it's not the focus on you getting, a Maple Leaf medallion. It's not a focus on you being employee of the month or employee of the year. It's a focus on how can we work as a team, as a group, to improve. And that's just a very different viewpoint than Americans. Many Americans dream of having their own personal glory and kind of being recognized for their actions. We've gotten so used to it that at the end of, a season, it starts from the time you're a little kid. You have these participation trophies where everybody gets a little gold star or a gold medal. And then at the end of the season, there's all sorts of awards, right? For most improved and MVP and best hitter and best catcher and best this and best that and most improved over time. So that pretty much before you know it, all of these people get an award. But it's not like that in every other country. The Japanese are just like, okay, this is how we've improved over as a group, especially if it's a sporting event, looking at the team's progress, or if it's a group of students who've been together over the years in elementary school, looking at how their test scores have improved. So it's just a very different view of looking at the world compared to what we're used to. And so sociologists nowadays, and this is going to be your next journal, is going to be about values. This is going to be journal number 9, about, historically, you've got these sociologists like Robin Williams who focused on these, 15 different core values that make up America. But modern day sociologists, they don't necessarily agree that all of these, core values are still the same. And they definitely think that some new values have emerged. For example, modern day sociologists focus on self-fulfillment. And they say that it seems like more so now than ever before that Americans are so obsessed with themselves. And they have these personal goals. And they're obsessed with meeting these personal goals. I mean, Americans love to make New Year's resolutions. It's January 2nd and maybe even January 1st, and they're making these resolutions. They got plans, and they're going to work out, and they're going to lose 20 pounds, and they're going to climb Mount Everest, and they're going to give more to charity, and they're going to read 15 books a year, and they're going to donate more time, and they're going to be more in the now and present and not on their phones. Whatever the goal is, they're going to go back to school and get a degree. People have all of these goals, and they're committed towards this full development of their personality, of their talents, their potential. They're always working and moving and doing. They're not just being or observing or relaxing. It'd be nice if more Americans focused on mindfulness or meditation or things like that, but that's not necessarily what's going on here. And Americans are all about, go big, go hard, play hard, that kind of thing. And there has been more of a focus on, physical fitness. And some of it is related to health and mind and, body wellness, but a lot of it is about physical beauty and enhancing oneself to that best of its, that it can be. And there has been more of a recent time focused on leisure and having fun and youthfulness, but yet again, that's all about part of your goals. Americans are so goal orientated. And so that's what I'm asking you in this journal for number 9 is really, do you agree that goals have changed and that values have changed in America? And what are your thoughts on those? Are those really what's important to the American people? Do you agree with this list that's come out? Or are there some values more important than others? Have some critical values been left off the list? And the other one here is really and truly this sociologist, Daniel Yankelovich, and that kind of name right there is kind of a mouthful. And he really thinks that it's okay that self-fulfillment has been added to the list, and that there's nothing wrong with constantly wanting to improve yourself. He says that's not a bad thing, that you're trying to be the best version of yourself. And he says that there's benefits to be had to try to perhaps lose weight or improve your physical health or read more books or get more education or make new friends or travel the world. He says that's not really a bad thing, and I guess he's right, but at the same time it's a very American view that we're always improving ourselves. And I'm definitely a type A personality. I'm total Daniel Yankelovich. I'm all about self-fulfillment. I've always got a to-do list and a million things going on and trying to improve. But it's just very different than other cultures, which are okay with just being. So many other countries on this planet are okay with, let's just be. This is you. We accept you, and you can just be you. And you don't have to focus on constantly trying to fulfill and improve and get material comforts or whatever it may be to change your way of life. And really and truly, as I said, self-fulfillment can be a bad thing because self-fulfillment really focuses more so on what we refer to as narcissism. And so what we're getting at, though, with self-fulfillment is that ultimately, you've got some people like Yankelovich who basically says, it's improving yourself, and yes, it might have material comforts, and it may be that you're working less, than you did in the past, but it could be that you're reading more books, that you're getting more physically fit. It could be a good thing. But on the opposite end of the spectrum, there is this idea that, with self-fulfillment, you're so focused on you. Are you ever focused on society as a whole? And this is what I was getting at with that humanitarian idea, is are people doing charity work? Are they doing anything to help the impoverished or to help the people who are less abled? Are they, helping people around the globe? Are they giving back? And it could be that you're religious-based activities or not. And, in school, obviously, there's been a big push, to get you guys to do more community service as we've come out with Silver Cord and such. But not everybody, participates in that Silver Cord activity. Not all schools are really interested in doing the Silver Cord program. And so the idea here is that has there become this, what we refer to this cult of narcissism? Have people just become so obsessed with themselves and improving themselves, and they're less, focused on morality and humanitarian efforts? And so has that value changed? Are they just focused on living the good life? And of course, the media portrays, whether we're talking about social media or television or even radio or newspaper magazine ads, they always, show these fabulous celebrities, especially in reality TV, who have these amazing life, and they're healthy and they're hot and they've got these great cars and they take these amazing vacations, and people want to do that and they want to live beyond their, means, and they go into debt to do so. And so what some sociologists have said is that there's been a real shift in America. We've focused so much on individual achievement that it's bad. And we have become so narcissistic, so obsessed with this ourselves, that it is this cult of narcissism, and that we're moving too far in that direction as we're becoming more and more obsessed with beauty and dieting and things like that, and less obsessed with perhaps our environment or equality or helping others or making the world a better place. And that's it for now. I feel like I left off, I kept talking about narcissism, but I never actually had it on there as the slide. So yeah, I'm going to add a number 2 right here because I put number 1 before, self-fulfillment, but I never put narcissism on there. I just realized that, guys. I kept thinking there was one more slide where it was going to come up. But I don't know if I deleted it or what I did. I'm reading the slide right now and I don't think I ever had that on there. Nope, guess not. All right, guys. Well, that's it for today. That's the end of the chapter. Have a great day, guys. So, we're out of here. Happy Monday. Later.